Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name's Jen and I'm here in the suburbs in Central Florida and I do a lot of raised bed gardening. What I want to share with you today is everything that I've harvested, transplanted, and cooked from the garden in the month of May. This is the start of a monthly series that I want to do on the channel to help challenge us to keep our gardens productive year round. If this is something you're interested in, hit that like and subscribe button and let's get right into it. San Marzano tomatoes right here. I'm going to show you, basically this is the first sign of a color change of the tomato. This is called the first blush. This is when I harvest my tomatoes. The reason you want to harvest them at first blush is because they're not going to get any bigger on the vine. All they're going to do is ripen, which they can do sitting in a windowsill or something. Birds love to eat the tomatoes and they know when they're ripe. So it's best to get them out of the garden unless you have some other means of protecting against the birds. This is what I mean. Just about every day I come out and I find at least one, that went to the birds. Now this is my shishito pepper plant. I think I've only got one pepper that's worth picking right now. But I like to eat them on top of eggs with my tomatoes in the morning. I'm gonna harvest some kale right here. Whew. There's quite a bit of kale. Kale does really well for me in the heat in Central Florida. On a typical morning, I'll make breakfast for my husband and I, and it usually consists of sourdough toast and eggs. In this case, I had just harvested kale, San Marzano tomatoes, and shishito peppers, and so I sauteed the kale and put raw tomatoes and shishito peppers on top of the eggs, and it was so good. Now I want to go ahead and harvest my first ever eggplant. You can see it's really big. You can see it against the size of my hand. It's getting really big. And if you let it go too long, it's just gonna get a lot tougher and maybe less enjoyable to eat. So what I'm gonna do is just clip it right up here. And there we go, my first ever eggplant. And I think I have another one coming here. They grow really fast actually. So I may keep this in the fridge and wait until this one's ready and then do like an eggplant parmesan. Or if it's starting to ripen faster than I expect, I may just roast it. Here's the harvest of the second eggplant of the month, but I haven't gotten around to using it. They're still in the fridge, hoping to try something with them next month. I've got a couple spots of parsley around the garden. I'm gonna go ahead and harvest a bunch of it. There's just a lot. I think it's ready to get cut back. My flat leaf parsley, I've got almost more parsley than I know what to do with. I'm also gonna harvest some of this oregano, and I've got more oregano down there. I just kind of want to clean it up so that it's not leaning into the other squares. I love how it climbs out of the raised bed though, so I'm probably gonna leave that part. And it's so easy to harvest. You basically just grab it and clip it. Here's me transplanting Kentucky Wonder pole beans. This variety is supposed to be resistant to bean rust, which is a really common type of fungus that we get on beans here in humid Central Florida. Realistically, even though it's resistant, I probably planted it at the wrong time. I've heard some people succeed by using a shade cloth and extra watering, but I'm not sure if these are gonna make it. So far, they look to be doing okay. Some of the leaves are turning brown and falling off, but they're climbing up the trellis just fine. So I'll keep them in and see what happens. This next crop I transplanted in is zucchini. I planted this knowing that it was the wrong time for zucchini. But my goal for transplanting this zucchini was not necessarily to harvest zucchini. I wanted to get some practice with hand pollinating because I think maybe that's one of the reasons why I failed in the past. So I put it in kind of the shadiest, coolest spot in my raised bed, and I'm gonna see if I can get some practice with hand pollination. Here I am harvesting chives by just grabbing them and giving them a good haircut, and then rosemary I'm harvesting by cutting off right where that new growth is on the white stem. My favorite reason to use chives and rosemary is in my chives, rosemary, and garlic homemade sourdough bread. I eat sourdough bread almost every day, and this is one of my go-to loaves. I'll make a video soon telling you exactly how I make it. I also propagated my own rosemary by taking a fresh cutting from just the white new growth part of a rosemary plant, put it in seed starting mix, and treated it like a seedling in a seed starting tray. It grew roots, and then I transplanted it into the garden. It was starting to get way too hot for me to have cabbage in the garden, so I knew I needed to get it out, and there was no more waiting on it to get any bigger. So I went ahead and harvested this head of cabbage, and then I made some homemade kimchi. I'll put a link in the description box to the kimchi recipe that I used. But warning, it took me almost 45 minutes to make the kimchi because of all the chopping and cutting of all the vegetables. I haven't actually tasted it yet because it needs to ferment for weeks, but it looks like it's going to be really good. Celery is another cool season crop that I've had in the garden since I started it from seed on October 1st. I harvested this celery in the middle of May because it was just time to get it out of the garden. I was nervous it was going to bolt or something. So some of them are pretty small. I ended up just chopping it and putting it in the freezer to save for some fall soup. I also harvested thyme this month and made a really interesting toast recipe from the Half-Baked Harvest book from Tegan Gerard. I'll put a link in the description box to that cookbook below, but basically it's toasted sourdough bread topped with ricotta cheese, apple, almond butter, thyme, and sea salt. It was so good. Now, while we're talking about my obsession with sourdough toast, I want to show you this one that I did with mint from the garden. I put ricotta cheese, strawberries, and honey on top of toasted sourdough bread, and the only thing it was missing, I feel like, was salt. So next time I do it, I'm going to sprinkle a little sea salt, and maybe it'll be better. You want to go find a spot in the garden?
Yeah, let's get it.
I also started some sweet potatoes. I did it with slips, and I also did it by just putting a sprouted sweet potato in the ground. I'm going to put a link in the top of the video for my thorough 8-week long process of creating slips and why I'm never using them again. Check it out. Now, I've read that some of the more successful peas in the summer are going to be your southern peas here in Central Florida. So I planted black-eyed peas in my new raised bed on the other side of my garden. And then I also planted Seminole pumpkins and Cucamelon. Seminole pumpkins are supposed to be resistant to powdery mildew and one of the best varieties of pumpkin, or even the only variety of pumpkin that we can grow here in Central Florida. So I got a head start on those. Last year I was late and missed Halloween and I was bummed out. The Cucamelon actually did really poorly after transplant. It was such a delicate plant. I don't know that I would transplant it ever again. I might try direct sow and cover it with some sort of humidity dome or something while it's in the garden instead of trying to transplant. Now I also transplanted some South Anna butternut squash, which is supposed to be resistant to powdery mildew and a high producer here in Central Florida. So far, the butternut squash is growing really quickly. I don't have any female flowers yet, but I'm looking every day. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed learning about what I harvested, transplanted, and cooked this month. I'm going to show you some more next month. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.